Hey y'all, I'm going to talk today about a mistake you're probably making with your nonprofit fundraising. Are you curious about what that mistake is? Let's get into it. Hey y'all, Tiffany here with Boss in the Budget. If you don't know me, I help new and small nonprofits get up and running and also raise money for those nonprofits. And I'm going to share an important video that we need to talk about when it comes to nonprofit fundraising. If you need help figuring out how to fundraise, if you've never fundraised before, you have no idea how to ask people for money, I recorded a nonprofit fundraising masterclass, and it goes through from beginning to end all the pieces you need to have in place to ask for money, to be able to raise money for your nonprofit. It talks about how to put your fundraising plan in place. It talks about how to target particular donors, all that kind of stuff. If you need help with that, make sure you check out the masterclass below. But let's get to the video at hand. I want to talk to you about a mistake that most people make when they're starting their nonprofits when it comes to fundraising. Make sure you stay to the end because I'm going to share a couple resources with you guys to help you navigate this special situation to help keep you compliant with the states. All right, so the big mistake that a lot of people make when it comes to fundraising, and I've made this mistake as well, is not understanding what's called charitable solicitation, right? So I want you to write down in the comments below if you have ever heard of charitable solicitation or if this is a completely new concept to you, all right? So charitable solicitation is just the process of a charitable organization asking for money. Now, if you are a charitable organization, it's more than likely that the state that you're operating in will require that you register to solicit as a charitable organization. So that means that there are a set of processes, forms you have to fill out, fees you have to pay in order to ask people for money. That's what I mean by solicit. This also could apply to grant funding. So if you want to receive contributions in a particular state and a funder is in a particular state, then you probably have to register as a charitable organization in that state. But I'm going to back it up a little bit. So I'm going to break down what all this is just so you understand why this is a thing and how to make sure that you're compliant. So charitable solicitation laws were put in place to protect the consumer, right? To protect the residents and to arm potential donors with information to make sure that they're donating to credible organizations. There are a lot of people out here asking for money, but how can you tell who's credible and who's not? How do you know who to trust when you see a random GoFundMe or when you see a random Facebook fundraiser? How do you know that it's an organization that really is credible, right? So those laws were put in place so that organizations could register. They could be registered with the state. So if a consumer in that state wants to look up a particular organization, they can feel comfortable that that organization actually applied. They supplied information to the state to prove that they were actually a charitable organization and that there's at least some layer of oversight. So what does this mean for you as a nonprofit organization? This means that if you are soliciting, if you're asking for money from people who live in a particular state, then you need to do your research and figure out what the charitable solicitation requirements are and what you have to do to fulfill those requirements. Now, this is a really messy situation because every state has a different approach. Every state has a different form. Every state has a different schedule of fees. So that means that what happens in one state, your process may be completely different or may look completely different if you're trying to do it in another state. The other thing is this, a lot of states have different thresholds. So if you're not raising more than like $5,000, for example, they may consider you exempt from charitable solicitation registration, but you may still have to fill out a form to prove that you're exempt. So even if you are exempt, you still have to go through the process. You still have to investigate to make sure that you are doing your due diligence to make sure that you are registering where you need to register. So you're probably watching this video saying, Tiffany, wait a minute. So are you saying to me that if I ask someone for money from a particular state, that I have to go to every single state and figure out like what the process is? The answer is generally yes, but here are a couple caveats that I'm going to give you. Now, there is a standardized form that has been developed that certain states may accept instead of the form that they require that's particular to their state. But again, this varies by state, and you still have to do your research regardless to make sure that you've done everything you need to do to be compliant. The other thing is most states require that you register before you receive donations. So what does that mean? So someone may hear about your campaign from another state and you may not have expected them to give, but if they give and they live in another state, then you may be required to register in that state. The other thing is this: these laws were created before the internet was popping. So if you have a donate button on your website, then many states consider that solicitation, and they'll require you to register even if you're not actively soliciting, even if you're not directly asking people. Just the presence of a donate button on your website is enough for them to say that that's solicitation, and they may require that you fill out paperwork. So you see how messy this is, right? So you just want to make sure that you're at least aware of this and you do your due diligence. When people ask me, like, how do I deal with this as a new nonprofit? We probably have to spend more money than we're even making. I can't give you any advice, okay? So I'm not a lawyer and I'm also not an accountant. So you need to refer to the professionals in your area just to make sure that you're compliant, at least in your state. But I would just say watch your data. Look at where your donations are coming from and do your best, right? So you can't anticipate where money is coming from. But there are some instances where you can. If you know you're going for a big grant, and you know the money is coming from big grant and the funder is in a different state, then you probably need to register in that state. So there are some things you can do to get ahead of it. And then honestly, there's some things you can't do. All right. So, but wait to the end because I do have a couple of resources for you if this is worrying you, if you feel like you need to be up on this. So there are only 9 states that don't require you to register for charitable solicitation, but there may be other rules and regulations around fundraising. So the moral of the story is you just got to do your research where you know you're going to be asking for money or where donations are coming from. You just have to do your research regardless to make sure that you're compliant. So if you are thoroughly confused by the information or you're just kind of awestruck by the information in this video, I'm going to share 3 resources that can help you kind of understand a little bit better if you want to take more time to research this issue. The first link I'm sharing is from the National Council of Nonprofits. They have a page of resources related to charitable solicitation. So if you want to learn more from kind of like a national scope, check out that resource below. The second resource is from Harbor Compliance. So they are an organization that basically does the registrations for you. So you can pay them, and it's a pretty hefty chunk of money, but you can pay them to fill out the forms for you and maintain those forms, because those forms are to be done on a regular basis. In most circumstances, you have to submit those forms and update them on an annual basis. So you need someone to keep track of all of that. And so Harbor Compliance is one of those organizations that does it for you. I'm not endorsing them. I have not used them before. I'm just offering them up. And the reason why I'm offering them up as an option is because they have a really good website that breaks it down and lets you see from state to state what the requirements are. And they actually have other resources like the requirements to start a nonprofit from state to state. They have a handy dandy map that you can just pick the state so you can see what the requirements are. So that's why I'm shouting them out. I'm not shouting them out because I'm endorsing them or anything like that. It's just that they have a great website that has good resources. The last resource that I want to share with you, and I'm talking about it last because you probably don't want to look at it, but it's a document called the Charleston Principles. So there was a national meeting put together to deal with this issue, to figure out how to wade through the whole new world of online donations, and how do you deal with charitable solicitation when the way that we collect money is changing. And even since the Charleston Principles were put out, things have changed even more with things like GoFundMe and Cash App and stuff like that. So if you're interested in the discussion that came out of that, then I'm going to link a paper that you can just look for yourself so you can get more information about it. On this channel, I'm always about you going to the source. I'm always about you doing your research. You can get general information from me, but by all means, please do not stop with me. You need to do your own research. And as I always say, make sure you go to the source. Thank y'all so much for watching this video. If you need help starting your nonprofit, make sure you visit me at www.bossonthebudget.com. If you'd like to check out my nonprofit startup workbook, which walks you through the first year of your nonprofit to help you get set up with your nonprofit once the paperwork is done, then make sure you check out the link to that below. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching again, and I'll see you in the next video.